Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Julia Hackett, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the Early Days project, which is about parents' experiences of the early days of bereavement and the support that they receive from children's hospices. The death of a child is a profound and distressing experience faced by thousands of parents every year. Compared to other types of bereavement, parental bereavement carries the greatest risk for long-term impacts on mental and physical health. There is growing evidence that the ways parents are supported immediately after their child's death impacts outcomes. In the past, it was believed that parents should not see or should be quickly separated from their child's body. However, evidence on the value and potential benefits to parents of seeing and holding their dead child in the period immediately following their death has meant that providing this opportunity is now widely accepted as good practice. In the UK, all children's hospices offer parents the use of cooling facilities to extend the period of time before the child is transferred to the funeral director or their funeral. Now, there's a range of different types of cooling facilities. These can be an air-conditioned room, which is known as a cold bedroom, or a cold blanket, mattress, or Moses basket, which is sometimes called a cuddle cot. Now, although these have been a core feature of UK children's hospice provision, we know that provision and usage of and access to these facilities is varied, and there has only been 2 single-site studies of parental experience. So there's a real need for in-depth evidence to inform practice. So this study was a multi-site qualitative study which explored parents' experiences of the period of time before their child's funeral and how using a cooling facility shaped those experiences and ongoing grieving processes. We conducted in-depth interviews with bereaved parents whose child had died within the previous 18 months and had used a cooling facility provided by a UK children's hospice. Parents were offered a choice of face-to-face or telephone interviews, and during the pandemic that was telephone or Zoom. And these interviews comprised 2 components. Firstly, we had a narrative section, so this was where we asked parents to tell us their story, so to tell us a bit about their child and then to talk us through everything that happened up until just after their funeral. And then a semi-structured section, which was a focused set of questions specifically about cooling facility use. And we used these to broaden the questions and to lift the interview towards the end. The data were analysed using narrative and thematic approaches, and the analysis was informed by 2 conceptual frameworks. The first one was the liminal space of grief, and this talks about the experience of loss as placing an individual in a liminal or an in-between state, and this can be really deeply uncomfortable and disorientating and requires emotional and cognitive work to successfully adapt to what has happened. And then we also use Warden's task-based model of loss, and that argues that positive adaptation requires active engagement in 4 tasks. In terms of our sample, we recruited 8 hospices to identify and contact parents. In total, they contacted 96 bereaved families, and of those, 23 took part in an interview. Our sample was made up of 22 mothers and 8 fathers, and of these, 3 families used cooling facilities at home. The range of time that a cooling facility was used for was between 1 and 14 days. The age of children who died ranged between 4 hours to 21 years. At the time of their death, 14 had siblings, and 12 families spent extended periods of time with their child once they died, and 2 chose not to visit them. So just to give you some context of how parents described that period of time, all described using cooling facilities as positive, and they had no regrets using them and were thankful for the opportunity to do so. I can't thank them enough. The opportunity to just spend the time I did have with my child has been immense. But in talking about that time, it was evident that there was this notion of such positive experiences embedded within such a difficult and emotional time. It was like an airbag, it cushioned the blow. As well as benefiting them, at that point, parents believed that the opportunity to use a cooling facility was a really important, useful, and necessary part of the grieving process and affected these processes and outcomes in the longer term. During this period, parents were in a liminal or an in-between time, which enabled them to almost step out of reality. And for those who use cooling facilities in the hospice, an actual space in which to do this as well. Whilst their child had died, their body was still physically with them and they hadn't suddenly been taken away from them. So separation from their child hadn't yet fully happened. Having this time allowed parents to start engaging in grief work. It helped me considerably because I was able to go in and just be, to hold him, to be near him, to speak to him, to caress him, to look at him, because it allowed us to just let go, to say goodbye. Parents were also relatively in control of when to end usage of cooling facilities and had time to ready themselves for it to happen. When they talked about the possibility of a funeral director coming to the house and taking him, I just couldn't have done it. I just wasn't ready to let go. It was a gentle way to deal with the most shocking, mind-blowing thing I've ever known. It created a buffer between life with and life without. One key focus of our analysis was to investigate whether using cooling facilities supported engaging with wardens' 4 tasks of grief. And these 4 tasks are accepting the reality of loss, processing the pain of grief, adjusting to a world without their child, and finding enduring connections with their child. This is important because it's argued that failure to engage with these tasks is maladaptive and risks poor bereavement outcomes. And also just to note that Warden doesn't conceptualise these tasks as steps or as having an end point, and that actually people may come back to them on multiple occasions. A strong and consistent theme in parents' accounts was their conviction that using cooling facilities supported their acceptance that their child had died. I think maybe it makes it more real. I can't deny that he is dead because I lived with his body for 4 days after it had happened, and he wasn't ripped away from me. I think it's important. I think that might have been the case if we hadn't had those 4 days. It would have felt like he was ripped away and we weren't in control. We had him home for 4 days and then his father carried him out the house. Almost all the parents we interviewed chose to spend time with their child's body on several and sometimes many occasions over a number of days. Their child's body, both in terms of how it looked and how it felt, was clear evidence of their death, and this was something that many parents described as helpful. And in some ways, I do think I needed to see that. I needed to know he was really gone, and that this is what happens when someone dies. And I think I needed to have a sense that it's not like he's out there somewhere and I should really keep trying. I think it gave me that sense of closure. Parents' accounts suggest that that acceptance significantly contributed to the striking change in their feelings about their child's body being transferred to a funeral director, which at the outset was utterly imaginable for them all. Facing and dealing with, rather than suppressing emotional pain, is something which is likely to occur for many years. Whilst no less significant, parents believe their initial shock and pain was in the early days softened because their child's body hadn't been taken immediately away from them, and the memories of that time were an ongoing source of comfort. Both at the time and longer term, we have something positive to reflect upon following something so harsh. It might sound strange, but making memories is something which is a point of reference that you can go back to. Those who use cooling facilities at the hospice also valued being in a setting where grief was normalised and talked about. Being away from home without their usual spaces and routines had made them talk to each other about their own thoughts and feelings. I don't think it would have been good for any of us because I don't think anybody would have talked. So when we were together and there was no Wi-Fi, we actually talked to each other about things. So if that facility weren't there and we'd had to have gone straight back home, I don't think any of us would have coped that well, to be honest. But to just spend that time together and still laugh and cry with her close by, I feel made the whole difference. For parents, the process of adjusting to a world without their child is long-term and impacts on all aspects of life, such as their identity, roles and responsibilities, their daily routines, and worldviews and beliefs. However, there was evidence in parent stories of some very early work in engaging with this. For some, daily life was no longer occupied by the demands and routines associated with their child's care, and experiencing this change away from home was helpful. It was a nice transition, and it helped me to adapt to the new pace of my life, where my days are so much longer because they're not filled with caring for him. It did help because it was a big transition. It was a nice adjustment to the new, slower pace of my life, and I think that helped me psychologically. It helped me to adjust. Parents were also encouraged by hospice staff to do things for the first time. So this could be things like nipping home for the first time, going to the shops, or speaking to a neighbour. And these are all first steps in the process of adjustment. And as well, just having that knowledge that they could then return to their child's body and to that all-encompassing support from the hospice really helped them in managing doing these activities. So Warden makes it very clear that the desired outcome of grieving and grief work is not an end to the relationship. Instead, it's about finding ways to continue life without their child's physical presence. During this time, parents made memories with and mementos of their child. So for making memories, this could be things like reading stories to them, taking them for a walk outside, watching films together. And for the mementos, these are things like the hand and footprints or casts, taking locks of hair, or taking photographs. And all parents identified doing this as really beneficial. One of the biggest things for me was they made 2 little pendants that they put onto a necklace. I was really pleased with that one, and we did a hand cast of his father's hand holding hers, and that was a big thing that he wanted to do. In particular, for those parents who'd experienced baby death, using cooling facilities allowed them the time to make memories of being with their child and doing things that they had imagined they would do. All I remember really is just sitting with him and holding him. I think it gave us that little bit of time that we didn't have. I was able to take him out for a little walk as well in the little forest outside. It was nice to do that because I obviously hadn't got to take him outside before. So overall, cooling facilities are a core element of UK children's hospice provision. Our findings demonstrate how they support early parental grieving processes. In particular, there is clear evidence that having multiple opportunities to see their child's body supported parents' acceptance of the reality of their child's death. This suggests that every parent should be given the opportunity to use cooling facilities if they would like to. This has implications for informing evidence-based practice within children's hospices and NHS services who are beginning to offer this provision. However, it's important to offer individualised care, as not all parents want to use cooling facilities in the same way or the same place.